I spent 13 years building our family business to $150 million. At Mom's birthday party, my brother announced, "You're worthless. Time to step aside." And Mom nodded in agreement. So, I left quietly. But the next morning when they arrived at work, their faces went pale, and now they are begging me to come back. I was the one who stayed behind while my brother Carl got his fancy MBA in New York. I was the one working nights at Mom's failing computer repair shop while taking programming classes at community college. In my final year, I developed inventory management software for small businesses. Simple, affordable, exactly what they needed. Mom was skeptical, but within 6 months, we had 40 clients. Within a year, 100,000 inches revenue. I dropped out with 1 semester left because I didn't need the degree. I was building something real. For 5 years, I worked 14-hour days, transforming that repair shop into a legitimate software company. Dad would bring me dinner at 9 p.m. because I'd forget to eat. We hit 1 million in revenue, then 5, then 20. Our client base expanded from local shops to national corporations. That's when Carl suddenly wanted in. He quit his consulting job and moved back home. "It's time I took my rightful place in the company," he announced. Mom made him co-CEO alongside me because of his credentials. Never mind that I'd built everything from scratch. The next 8 years, I kept building while Carl took credit. He gave interviews about being a visionary, accepted awards for my innovations, started excluding me from meetings, making decisions without consulting me. Our revenue hit 150 million, but I was being pushed aside in my own company. Then came Mom's 60th birthday. Carl rented a hotel ballroom and invited 500 guests, business associates, clients, investors. During dinner, he stood up for a speech. "The board has agreed the company needs unified leadership," he announced. "That's why, effective immediately, I'm taking over as sole CEO." My stomach dropped. "Board meetings? What board meetings? Some people are better suited to technical roles rather than leadership," Carl continued, staring directly at me. "My sister Walt has been adequate, maintaining our legacy systems. But to compete today, we need excellence." He paused. "Frankly, Walt, you're worthless in today's business world. Time to step aside gracefully." 200 pairs of eyes turned to me. I looked at Mom. She was nodding, smiling proudly at Carl. Dad stared at his plate, hands shaking. Everyone expected tears, shouting, drama. Instead, I stood up slowly, walked to Mom's table, placed my wrapped gift in front of her, and left without a word. I went home and spent the night reviewing documents. Every contract, every licensing agreement, every patent filing. All those years of meticulous record-keeping suddenly made perfect sense. The next morning at 6 a.m., I sent one email to our entire client list. "Due to organizational restructuring at Cuban Technologies, all software licenses and support agreements require renegotiation. Please contact CEO Carl Cuban directly." Then, I emailed our development team. "I'm launching a new venture. If you're interested in joining me, let's talk." Finally, I sent termination notices for every vendor contract I'd personally signed, which was all of them, because I'd been the one actually running operations for 13 years. See, here's what Carl never bothered to learn. Every software license, every support contract, every vendor relationship, they were all in my name. The proprietary software they were selling, I owned the patents. Personally, I've been careful about that from day one. Back when it was just me and Mom's repair shop, the company could keep the Cuban Technologies name. But without the software, without the support infrastructure, without the vendors, without the development team, they had nothing but an expensive office and Carl's MBA. When Carl arrived at work that morning, 67 clients had already threatened to pull their contracts. Our entire 12-person development team had quit overnight. 3 major investors were demanding emergency meetings. Dad showed up at my apartment at 7 a.m., looking like he hadn't slept. He had a flash drive in his shaking hands. "I've been recording every board meeting for 3 years," he whispered. "Carl has been embezzling money through fake vendor accounts. Mom knew about it. They planned to frame you for it once you were fully pushed out." My blood ran cold as he handed me the drive. I asked why he never told me. "Because I'm a coward," he said, tears streaming down his face. But then he collapsed right there in my doorway, clutching his chest. I literally froze for like 2 seconds, just staring at him on the floor. My dad, the man who brought me dinner every night for years while I built that company from nothing, was now lying there unconscious with this flash drive still gripped in his hand. I dropped to my knees and started checking for a pulse. It was there, but weak and irregular. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get my phone out of my pocket. 911. "What's your emergency?" "My father just collapsed," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "He's breathing but unconscious. I think it's his heart." The operator started asking me questions, The standard stuff. Was he conscious? Was he breathing normally? Did he have a history of heart problems? I answered everything on autopilot while my brain was racing. The flash drive, the evidence, Carl and Mom planning to frame me for embezzlement. This was bigger than I thought. The paramedics arrived in what felt like hours but was probably only 6 minutes. While they were loading Dad onto the stretcher, I did something that probably makes me sound cold. I pulled the flash drive from his hand as gently as I could and slipped it into my pocket. One of the EMTs gave me this look, like she'd seen me take something, but she didn't say anything. They were too focused on getting Dad stabilized. "Ma'am, are you riding with us?" the lead paramedic asked. "Yes, absolutely," I said, grabbing my laptop bag and following them out. In the ambulance, I sat there holding Dad's hand while they hooked him up to all these machines. The steady beep of the heart monitor was the only sound besides the siren. Dad's face was gray, honestly terrifying, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. If what he said was true, if Carl really had been stealing money and planning to pin it on me, I needed that evidence secure before anything else happened. I know it sounds awful, sitting there next to my unconscious father and thinking about business, but this was my life's work we're talking about. 13 years. Everything. When we got to the hospital, they rushed Dad into emergency. A nurse directed me to a waiting area and told me someone would update me soon. The moment she left, I pulled out my laptop. My hands were still shaking, but I forced myself to focus. I plugged in the flash drive. There were folders, dozens of them, each one labeled with dates going back 3 years. I opened the most recent one and found audio files. I clicked on one randomly. Carl's voice came through my headphones. "The Patterson account worked perfectly. Moved another $50K through that vendor last month. Nobody's even looking at those invoices." Mom's voice responded. "Good. We need to accelerate this. Once we push Walt out completely, we'll need to tie up any loose ends. The girl's too trusting. She won't even see it coming." I actually felt sick, like physically sick. I had to pull my headphones off for a second and just breathe. This was my mom, my own mother, talking about framing me for theft, like I was some kind of business obstacle to remove. But I couldn't fall apart right now. I opened my phone and logged into 3 different cloud storage accounts: Google Drive, Dropbox, and a secure encrypted service I used for sensitive client data. I started uploading everything from the flash drive to all 3 accounts. It took about 20 minutes, and the whole time I kept looking up, paranoid that Carl or Mom would walk through those doors any second. Family of Robert Cuban? I jumped. A doctor in blue scrubs was standing there with a clipboard. "Yes, that's me. I'm his daughter, Walt. Your father suffered a significant cardiac event. We've stabilized him for now, but he needs emergency surgery. There's a blockage in his left anterior descending artery. We need your consent to proceed." My mind was blank for a second. Will he be okay? The surgery has good success rates, but there are always risks given his age and the severity of the blockage. We need to operate soon. I signed the forms. What else could I do? They wheeled him away and I was left alone in that waiting room with my laptop and 3 cloud accounts now full of evidence that could destroy my family. My phone buzzed. It was Carl. "Where the hell are you? Clients are losing their minds. You need to fix this now." I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Let him panic. Another buzz. Mom this time. "Walt, Carl told me what you did. This is unacceptable. We need to talk immediately. Don't make this worse than it already is." I blocked her number. Then I blocked Carl's. I couldn't deal with them right now, not with Dad in surgery, and definitely not before I knew the full extent of what was on those recordings. I spent the next 4 hours in that waiting room going through every single file on the flash drive. There were spreadsheets showing fake vendor accounts, invoices for services that were never rendered, bank transfers to offshore accounts, and hours upon hours of recorded board meetings where Carl and Mom discussed every detail of their scheme. The board meetings were the worst. There were apparently secret board meetings that I'd never been invited to. Meetings where Carl convinced 3 outside investors that the company needed fresh leadership and that I was holding the company back with outdated technical thinking. Mom backed him up every single time, talking about how I was difficult to work with and resistant to change. In one recording from about 6 months ago, Carl literally said, "Once we get Walt out, we can move the embezzled funds more freely. She's been too hands-on with the vendor accounts. We need someone less involved in day-to-day operations." One of the investors, a guy named Morrison, actually pushed back. "This feels wrong, Carl. Walt built this company. The clients trust her. The clients trust the Cuban name." Carl replied smoothly. "They don't care who's actually running things as long as the product works. And once we bring in a proper CTO, someone with actual corporate experience, they won't even notice Walt's gone." Mom added, "My daughter is brilliant with code, but she's not a business person. She never has been. This is what's best for everyone, including her." I had to stop the recording because I was crying. Sitting there in a hospital waiting room, headphones on, just crying silently while people walked past. The betrayal wasn't just that they wanted me out. It was how little they valued everything I'd done. 13 years of my life, and to them I was just an obstacle. Around 2 p.m., a nurse came out and told me Dad was out of of surgery. It had gone well, but he'd be in recovery for a while and then move to ICU. I could see him briefly once he was settled. I spent another hour organizing the evidence. I created a master document cataloging every fraudulent transaction, every incriminating conversation, every lie Carl had told to investors. Then I made sure everything was backed up in multiple locations. I even emailed copies to myself at 3 different email addresses. By the time they let me see Dad, he was unconscious but stable, tubes and wires everywhere. The nurse said he'd been placed in a medically induced coma to help his body recover from the trauma of surgery. They'd bring him out of it in a few days. I sat next to his bed and held his hand carefully, avoiding all the IV lines. "I got the evidence, Dad," I whispered. "I got all of it, and I'm going to make this right. I promise you that." My phone buzzed. I'd forgotten I hadn't blocked everyone. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Miss Cuban, this is Janet Pierce from Morrison & Associates. We're one of your investors. We need to speak with you urgently about Cuban Technologies. Can you call me back at this number?" I stepped out into the hallway and called her back immediately. "Miss Cuban, thank you for calling back. I'll be direct. We've received some concerning reports about yesterday's contract terminations. Carl is telling us this was an unauthorized action on your part, and that you've basically sabotaged the company out of spite. But honestly, that doesn't match anything we know about you. Can you tell us your side of this?" I took a breath. Be careful, I thought. Don't reveal everything yet. "Miss Pierce, I resigned from Cuban Technologies last night after my brother publicly humiliated me at a family event and announced he was taking sole control of the company. I was never consulted about this decision, never informed there were even discussions happening. As for the contract terminations, those were contracts that I personally negotiated and signed. They were in my name because I built those client relationships. When I left the company, I exercised my legal right to terminate agreements I was personally bound to." There was a pause. "So Carl pushed you out without board approval?" "I don't know what the board approved or didn't approve because I wasn't invited to any of these meetings. Apparently there have been board meetings happening for months that I knew nothing about." Another pause. Longer this time. "Miss Cuban, this is very concerning. We were told these were joint decisions, that you agreed with the leadership transition." "No, ma'am. I found out at the same time as 200 party guests when my brother called me worthless and told me to step aside gracefully." "Jesus," she muttered. "Then, more professionally, would you be willing to meet with me and the other primary investors? Off the record, just to discuss what's actually happening with this company?" "I would, but my father just had emergency heart surgery, and I'm at the hospital right now." "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Is he all right?" "He's stable but in ICU. The stress from work apparently triggered a cardiac event." "Take your time with your family, Miss Cuban, but when you're ready, please reach out. I think we need to have a serious conversation about what's been happening at Cuban Technologies." I hung up and leaned against the hospital wall. Things were moving faster than I expected. The investors were already questioning Carl's story. Good. I went back to sit with Dad. The nurse said I could stay as long as I wanted since visiting hours were flexible in ICU. I pulled out my laptop and started drafting a business plan for my new company. I already had a name picked out, Stratton Software Solutions, named after the street where Dad's original repair shop had been located. By midnight, I had a complete business plan, preliminary financial projections, and a list of the 12 developers who'd already agreed to jump ship from Cuban Technologies. I also had a list of clients I wanted to approach, starting with the ones who'd been most responsive to my termination emails. A phone call woke me up at 6 a.m. I'd fallen asleep in the chair next to Dad's bed. It was Carl. He'd somehow gotten through even though I'd blocked him. "Must have called from a different number. You vindictive little bitch," he hissed. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Morrison is pulling their funding. 3 clients canceled contracts this morning. The development team all quit. You've destroyed everything." I was fully awake now. "No, Carl. I built everything. You destroyed it by being a greedy, lying thief." "What the hell are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fake vendor accounts, the embezzlement, the offshore transfers. Should I keep going?" Complete silence on the other end. "Dad told me everything before he collapsed," I continued. "Everything you and Mom did, every lie you told, every dollar you stole. And yeah, he has proof. Lots of it." "You're lying," Carl said, but his voice shook. "Dad wouldn't do that. Turns out even cowards have their breaking point. See you soon, Carl." I hung up and blocked that number too. Then my phone rang again immediately. Mom, this time, calling from what must have been Dad's phone. "Where is your father? Why isn't he answering his phone? And why are you at the hospital?" The nurse said. "Robert Cuban's daughter is there." "What's going on?" "Dad collapsed at my apartment yesterday morning after he brought me some very interesting financial documents," I said calmly. "He had a heart attack. He's currently in ICU recovering from emergency surgery." Mom's sharp intake of breath was audible. "What documents?" "I think you know exactly what documents." "Where are they? Where is his phone and his laptop?" "Dad asked me to keep them safe before he lost consciousness, so that's what I'm doing." "Walt, listen to me very carefully. Whatever your father told you, he's been under enormous stress. He's not thinking clearly. You need to give me his belongings right now. No, I don't think I will. This is not a game. You can't just steal your father's property. I'm not stealing anything. I'm protecting evidence. There's a difference. Mom's voice went ice cold. You have no idea what you're doing. You're going to regret this. We'll see about that. I hung up and turned off my phone completely. I didn't need the distraction. The hospital had given me Dad's personal effects when they'd admitted him. His wallet, keys, phone, and the laptop bag he'd been carrying. I'd already gone through his laptop. It had copies of some of the audio files, plus spreadsheets tracking every fraudulent transaction. Dad had been documenting everything for 3 years, just too scared to do anything about it, until yesterday. A doctor came in around 8 a.m. to check on Dad. She said everything looked good so far and they'd probably start bringing him out of the coma in about 48 hours. I needed coffee and food. I hadn't eaten since before Mom's birthday party, and my hands were shaking from caffeine withdrawal and probably shock. I went down to the hospital cafeteria and got the largest coffee they had, plus a sandwich I didn't really taste while eating it. While I was sitting there, my laptop open, I got an email from one of our biggest clients. Well, former clients now. Miss Cuban, we received your notice about contract renegotiation. We've been with Cuban Technologies for 8 years, and frankly, you're the only reason we stayed this long. Your brother has no idea how our integration works, and his sales team is absolutely useless. If you're starting something new, we want in. What are your terms? I actually smiled for the first time in 24 hours. I typed back immediately, outlining my new company and offering them the same service at 40% less than what they were paying Cuban Technologies. I hit send and waited. The response came back in under 10 minutes. Where do we sign? That's when I knew this was really going to work. Over the next few hours, I reached out personally to 8 of our key clients. Not the biggest ones necessarily, but the ones I had the strongest relationships with. The ones who'd been calling me directly for years whenever they had issues because they knew Carl's team was incompetent. 6 of them responded within the day saying they wanted to move their contracts to my new company. That was $60 million in annual recurring revenue that just walked away from Cuban Technologies. I was in the middle of drafting contracts when someone cleared their throat behind me. I turned around and there was Carl, standing in the cafeteria doorway looking like he hadn't slept either. We need to talk, he said. No, we really don't. Walt, please. Just 5 minutes. I looked at him. He looked terrible, honestly. His expensive suit was wrinkled and his eyes were bloodshot. Fine, 5 minutes. He sat down across from me, and I noticed his hands were shaking just like Dad's had been yesterday. I made mistakes, he started. I know I did, but you can't destroy the whole company over this. Think about the employees. Think about Dad's legacy. Dad's legacy? I actually laughed. Carl, you were stealing from Dad's legacy. You and Mom were planning to frame me for it. Don't talk to me about legacy. I never wanted to frame you. That was Mom's idea. I just wanted what was fair. Fair? You think stealing $2.8 million is fair? His face went white. How do you know that number? Because I've spent the last 18 hours going through every single transaction, every fake vendor invoice, every offshore transfer. I know everything, Carl. He put his head in his hands. I can fix this. I can pay it back. Just don't go to the police. The police? I hadn't even thought about involving police yet, but the panic in his voice told me everything I needed to know. Is that what you're worried about? Criminal charges? Walt, please. My kids. My wife. This would destroy them. You should have thought about that before you committed fraud. He looked up at me with actual tears in his eyes. What do you want? I'll do anything. Just tell me what you want. I leaned forward. I want you to face consequences for once in your entitled life. I want Mom to stop acting like I'm the problem child when you're the one who's been stealing. And I want my company back. You can have it, he said immediately. I'll resign. Today. Right now. Just please don't destroy everything. It's too late for that, Carl. You destroyed everything the moment you called me worthless in front of 200 people. I stood up and packed my laptop. Oh, and for the record, I've already pulled 6 major clients worth $60 million in revenue. By the end of the week, that number's going to be closer to $80 million. The only thing Cuban Technologies has left is debt and the fallout from your fraud. Have fun with that. I walked away and didn't look back. 2 hours later, I was back in Dad's ICU room when Mom showed up. Security tried to stop her because she wasn't on the approved visitor list, but she made such a scene they had to call a supervisor. I stepped out into the hallway to deal with it. Mom, you need to leave. I need to see your father. He's unconscious. There's nothing to see. This is ridiculous, Walt. I'm still his wife. For now, I said, but something tells me that's going to change pretty soon. Her eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means Dad knows everything, and when he wakes up, I don't think he's going to want to see you any more than I do. You turned him against me, she hissed. You've always been jealous that Carl was more successful, more capable. This is just revenge because you couldn't handle real leadership. Something in me snapped. You want to know what real leadership is, Mom? Real leadership is building a company from nothing while you doubted me every step of the way. way. Real leadership is working 14-hour days for years, while Carl was off getting his precious MBA. Real leadership is actually creating value, instead of just stealing it and calling yourself a visionary. I did that. Me. And you thanked me by plotting to frame me for Carl's crimes. She raised her hand like she was going to slap me, but I caught her wrist. Don't, I said quietly. Security is right there, and I'm really done playing nice. I let go of her wrist and she stepped back, looking genuinely shocked. I'd never stood up to her like that before, ever. You're going to regret this, she said. No, Mom, I really don't think I will. She left and I went back to Dad's room. My hands were shaking again, but this time it felt different, stronger, somehow. I pulled out my phone and sent an email to Morrison, the investor who'd called me yesterday. I attached edited clips from Dad's recordings, just enough to show that Carl had been creating fraudulent vendor invoices, but not enough to reveal my entire hand yet. Then I sent a message to the other two primary investors with the same clips. Subject line, what Carl isn't telling you about Cuban Technologies finances. I hit send and waited. The first response came within 20 minutes, from Morrison. Holy shit, emergency board meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. Can you attend? I replied, my father is in ICU. I can attend virtually if needed. Virtual works. I'll send you the link. And Walt, thank you for bringing this to our attention. The second investor, a woman named Peterson, emailed me separately. Is this real? Please tell me this isn't real. I have hours of recordings if you want more evidence, I replied. This is just the beginning. Jesus Christ. We need a full financial audit immediately. I'm calling our legal team right now. The third investor didn't respond, which made me nervous until I got a text from an unknown number about an hour later. This is James Chen. I can't discuss this over email for legal reasons, but we need to meet in person as soon as possible. Are you available tomorrow afternoon? I texted back. I'm at the hospital with my father who's in ICU. I can meet nearby if necessary. Which hospital? I told him and he responded immediately. I'll come to you. 2 p.m. tomorrow. There's a coffee shop across the street. See you there. Things were moving fast now. Really fast. That evening, Carl tried to force his way into my apartment building. He didn't get past the lobby because I'd already called ahead and told security not to let him in, but he made a huge scene, shouting about how I was destroying everything and I'd regret this. I watched from upstairs on the security camera feed that the building manager had pulled up for me. Carl was completely losing it, red-faced and screaming. At one point, he tried to grab one of the security guards, and that's when they escorted him out. I recorded the whole thing on my phone. More evidence. Around midnight, I got a call from my lawyer. Well, technically, he was a contracts lawyer I'd worked with on client agreements, but right now I needed legal advice. Walt, I heard what happened at your mom's birthday party. I'm so sorry. Thanks, Greg, but I'm actually calling because I need some guidance on something legal. I explained everything. The embezzlement, the recordings, the contract terminations, my new company. Greg was quiet for a long moment. Okay, first thing first, everything you did with the contracts was completely legal. You personally signed those agreements, so you have every right to terminate them. As for the intellectual property, if you personally hold the patents, then you're golden there too. The embezzlement evidence is trickier because that gets into criminal territory, but reporting a crime is never illegal. What about starting a competing business? Did you sign a non-compete? No, I was a founder. There was never a non-compete clause because why would there be? Then you're fine. You can start whatever company you want. The only issue might be if you're actively poaching employees, but even that's pretty hard to prove unless you're being really obvious about it. I thought about the 12 developers who'd all quit within hours of each other. Define obvious. Greg sighed. If they reached out to you first, that's fine. If you recruited them, that's murkier. But honestly, given what you're telling me about Carl's behavior and the embezzlement, I don't think anyone's going to have much sympathy for Cuban Technologies if this goes to court. What about the recordings? Are they admissible? Your dad made them? In board meetings? Yes. 3 years worth. Pennsylvania is a two-party consent state for recordings, but there are exceptions for evidence of criminal activity. Plus, if he was part of the board, he arguably had a right to record meetings. We'd need to review the specific circumstances, but my gut says they're usable, at least for civil purposes. Criminal prosecution might be different. I'm not trying to send anyone to jail, I said. I just want them to face consequences. They will, Greg said. Trust me, they will. We talked for another hour about my legal options and what I should be documenting. By the time we hung up, I had a clear plan. Step 1. Let the investors discover the full extent of Carl's fraud through their own audit. Step 2. Protect myself legally by documenting everything. Step 3. Build my new company so successfully that Cuban Technologies becomes irrelevant. Step 4. Make sure Carl and Mom never saw a penny of what they'd stolen. I fell asleep in the ICU chair again that night, my laptop balanced on my knees, and Dad's steady heartbeat beeping away next to me. The next morning, the virtual board meeting was chaos. I joined from my laptop in the ICU waiting room since I couldn't have the camera on in Dad's actual room. Carl was clearly panicking. He tried to explain away the recordings as taken out of context, and misunderstandings about accounting practices. He claimed I was a disgruntled ex-employee making up stories. Morrison cut him off. Carl, we're not idiots. We've seen the recordings. We've reviewed the transactions. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is fraud. I'd like to propose an immediate freeze on all company accounts pending a full forensic audit, Peterson added. And I'd like to recommend Carl's immediate termination as CEO. Carl's face on the Zoom screen went pale. You can't do this! My mother owns 40% of this company, and we collectively own 45%, Morrison said, which means we can absolutely do this. All in favor of terminating Carl Cuban's position as CEO, effective immediately? 3 hands went up. Mine wasn't counted since I was just observing. Motion passes. Carl, you're done. We'll be in touch about the return of embezzled funds. Carl started shouting, but Morrison just ended the meeting. I sat there in the waiting room staring at my laptop screen. It had actually happened. Carl was out. My phone rang. It was Peterson. Walt, the board would like to offer you the position of CEO, effective immediately. I took a deep breath. I appreciate that, but I'm going to decline. I've already started my own company and I'm committed to that path. I understand. That's actually what I was hoping you'd say. Would you be interested in serving as a consultant during the transition? We need someone who actually knows how the technology works. Let me think about it, I said. My father is in ICU and that's my priority right now. Of course, take your time. And Walt, I'm sorry we didn't see what was happening sooner. We should have been paying closer attention. After she hung up, I allowed myself one moment of satisfaction. Carl was out. The investors knew the truth. The company he'd tried to steal from me was falling apart. But I wasn't done yet. The meeting with James Chen at 2 p.m. was brief but productive. He wanted to invest in my new company. $5 million for a 15% stake, which valued Stratton Software Solutions at over $30 million before we'd even officially launched. I've been wanting to get away from Cuban Technologies for months, he admitted over coffee. Carl is incompetent and your mother enables him. But I had equity there and couldn't just walk away. Now that everything's falling apart anyway, I'd rather invest in something with actual potential. We shook hands and agreed to have contracts drawn up by the end of the week. When I got back to the hospital, there was a note from the nurses that Mom had tried to visit again and been turned away. Good. Dad was brought out of his medically induced coma on the 3rd day after his surgery. I was there when he opened his eyes, confused and groggy from all the medications. Walt? He rasped. I'm here, Dad. You're okay. You're in the hospital. You had surgery, but everything went well. He tried to sit up, but I gently pushed him back down. The flash drive, he whispered. Did you get it? I got it. I got everything. And Dad, Carl's out. The board fired him. They know everything. Tears started running down his face. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have stood up to them years ago. I should have protected you. You did protect me. You brought me the evidence. That took more courage than you know. Your mother, he started, but I cut him off. She tried to visit. I had them turn her away. You don't need that stress right now. He nodded weakly. I want a divorce. I figured. I can help you find a lawyer when you're feeling stronger. No, now. I want to file now. I don't want her to have any claim to my share of the company or any of the money. She helped Carl steal from our daughter. That's unforgivable. I called Greg, my lawyer, right there from Dad's hospital room. Within 2 hours, Dad had signed papers authorizing Greg to file for divorce on grounds of fraud and betrayal. Greg said it might take a while to finalize, but we could get a restraining order to keep Mom away from Dad if needed. Already done, Greg said. I filed an emergency order an hour ago. Your mother is not allowed within 500 feet of your father or the hospital. Dad looked relieved and exhausted. Get some rest, Dad. I've got everything under control. That's my girl, he whispered before closing his eyes. Over the next 2 weeks, everything moved faster than I could have imagined. The forensic audit of Cuban Technologies revealed that Carl had embezzled $2.8 million over 4 years through fake vendor accounts. Mom had helped him hide the money in offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The board voted unanimously to pursue criminal charges. Carl tried to make a deal. He called me from different numbers, sent emails, even had his wife call me begging for mercy. He offered to return all the money, sign over his equity, publicly admit to everything, whatever it took to avoid criminal prosecution. I told him I'd think about it. I didn't actually plan to let him off the hook, but watching him squirm for a while felt like justice. Meanwhile, my new company was exploding. 15 major clients signed contracts in the first 2 weeks. The development team I'd brought over from Cuban Technologies was working around the clock to get our infrastructure set up. I'd rented office space 3 blocks from the old Cuban Technologies headquarters, which felt a little petty but also deeply satisfying. 2 major venture capital firms reached out wanting to invest. By the end of the first month, Stratton Software Solutions was valued at $40 million, and I owned 65% of it. Dad was recovering well. He was out of ICU and in a regular hospital room, doing physical therapy and getting stronger every day. His divorce lawyer served Mom with papers 2 days after he filed. According to Greg, she'd lost her mind when she got served, screaming about how Dad was senile and I'd manipulated him. Mom tried to call me 7 times in one day. I never answered. Carl made one final desperate move. He tried to sell insider knowledge of my business strategy to 2 of my competitors. He reached out to them claiming he knew all my trade secrets and could help them build a better product. Except I'd anticipated this. Every client interaction, every strategic decision, every piece of code, everything was documented through official channels with my name on it. When his potential buyers did their due diligence, they realized Carl had literally nothing to offer. No actual knowledge of how the software worked, no genuine insights into our client relationships, nothing. And you know what those competitors did? They called me. Miss Cuban, we want to be very clear. We have no interest in anything your brother is selling, but we are interested in potentially partnering with Stratton Software Solutions on some initiatives. Would you be open to a conversation? I took the meetings. I'm not an idiot. If my competitors wanted to legitimately work together on certain initiatives where our products could integrate, that was good business. Plus, it meant I got to poach 3 of Cuban Technology's best managers when I mentioned I was hiring executives for my growing company. These were people who'd worked under me for years and were disgusted by what Carl had done. 6 weeks after Mom's birthday party, Cuban Technologies filed for bankruptcy protection. They had $15 million in debt after losing 80% of their client base. Multiple investor lawsuits over the fraud. No actual product anymore since I owned all the intellectual property. Just an empty office and Carl's worthless MBA. The bankruptcy filing made the local business news. Once promising tech company collapses amid fraud, scandal, and founder exodus. I was in my new office when I saw the headline. The office was beautiful, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Nothing like the cramped space I'd started in back when it was just Mom's repair shop. My assistant knocked on the door. Miss Cuban, there's a reporter from Tech Business Magazine here. They want to interview you about ethical entrepreneurship. I smiled. Send them in. The interview ran the following week. They focused on my philosophy of building sustainable businesses through genuine client relationships rather than flashy marketing. They talked about how I'd bootstrapped my original company from nothing and was now doing it again. They praised my commitment to employee ownership, noting that I'd given equity stakes to my key developers. They never mentioned my family by name. They didn't need to. Anyone in the industry knew exactly what they were talking about when they referenced the recent collapse of a prominent local software company amid financial misconduct. At the end of the interview, the reporter asked if I had any advice for other entrepreneurs. Document everything, I said. Build real relationships with your clients and employees. Own your intellectual property. And never let anyone convince you that you're not capable of leadership just because they have fancier credentials than you. The article went viral in tech circles. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from potential clients, investors, and people wanting to work for Stratton Software Solutions. Carl tried one last time to contact me. He showed up at my new office building, but security didn't let him pass the lobby. He stood there screaming that I'd destroyed his life, that I was vindictive and cruel, that he was going to lose everything. I watched on the security cameras from my office upstairs. Then I had my assistant call the police and file a restraining order. Mom sent me an email. Just one line. I hope you're proud of destroying your own family. I didn't respond, but I did block her email address. Instead, I called Dad, who was now home from the hospital and living in a short-term rental while the divorce proceedings continued. How are you feeling? I asked. Stronger every day, he said. Walt, I need to tell you something. The board at Cuban Technologies, they want to sell off the remaining assets. There's not much left, but your name is still technically on some of the original incorporation documents. You're entitled to compensation if you want it. I don't want anything from that company, Dad. Let them liquidate it all. Are you sure? It might be worth a few $100,000. I'm sure. Actually, I'm selling my equity stake to a liquidator. I want absolutely nothing to do with Cuban Technologies ever again. I did exactly that. Sold my remaining equity for pennies on the dollar just to sever the connection completely. The liquidator seemed confused why I'd take such a low offer, but I didn't care. It wasn't about the money. It was about being completely free. Dad asked if he could join my new company's board of directors. Not as an active participant, just as an advisor. Someone who understood the history and could provide guidance when I needed it. I'd like that, I said. But only if you're sure you're up for it. I've spent 3 years being a coward, Walt. I want to spend the rest of my life supporting you, if you'll let me. I gave him full voting rights on my board. Not because I needed his vote, but because I wanted him to know I trusted him again. The final piece fell into place when Mom's lawyer contacted mine asking for a settlement in the divorce. Mom wanted half of Dad's equity in my new company since it had been started during their marriage. Greg, my lawyer, responded with the recordings of Mom admitting to fraud, plus documented proof that she'd actively worked to harm me professionally. Your client will receive nothing, Greg's letter said, and she should consider herself lucky we're not pursuing criminal charges against her alongside Carl. Mom signed the divorce papers without further negotiation. 3 months after that birthday party, I was sitting in my office looking at our quarterly numbers. Stratton Software Solutions had hit $85 million in valuation. We had 32 employees, 47 major clients, and a product pipeline that would keep us competitive for years. I'd also been featured in 3 more business publications, been asked to speak at 2 tech conferences, and received an offer to teach an entrepreneurship course at my old community college. My phone buzzed. It was an unknown number, but I answered it anyway. Walt, it's Carl. I should have hung up, but curiosity got the better of me. What do you want, Carl? I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I know you don't believe me, but I really am sorry. I waited. He kept talking. I'm losing my house. My wife filed for divorce. The criminal charges are moving forward. I'm probably going to prison, and the thing that keeps me up at night isn't any of that. It's that you were right. You built something real and I destroyed it because I was jealous. You weren't jealous of what I built, Carl. You were jealous that you couldn't take credit for it anymore. Yeah, he said quietly. Yeah, you're right. Is there a point to this call? I just wanted you to know that I know what I did, and I'm sorry. Not because I want anything from you. I know that ship has sailed. I just needed to say it. I hung up without responding. A week later, I blocked his number too. I went home that night to my new apartment, twice the size of my old one with an actual view of the river. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony watching the sunset. My phone buzzed one more time. It was Dad. Proud of you, kiddo. Dinner this weekend? Absolutely, I typed back. I thought about Carl sitting in his collapsing life, about Mom living with the consequences of her choices, about Dad finally finding his courage, about me building something new from the ashes of what they'd tried to destroy. And I realized something. I didn't need their apologies. I didn't need their acknowledgement. I didn't need anything from them at all. I had everything I needed right here. The next day at work, my assistant told me there was someone in the lobby asking to see me. No appointment, just saying it was urgent. Who is it? He says his name is Morrison. One of your old investors? I smiled. Morrison had been one of the few people who'd actually had my back when everything fell apart. Send him up. Morrison walked into my office looking uncomfortable but determined. Walt, I need to apologize. We should have seen what was happening. We should have questioned why you weren't in those board meetings. We failed you. You're here now, I said. That's what matters. I have a proposition. 3 of us from the Cuban Technologies Investor Group want to invest in Stratton Software Solutions, not a controlling stake. We know you've earned the right to run your own company, but we believe in what you're building and we want to be part of it. $15 million for 10% equity. I thought about it for about 30 seconds. Deal. But I wanted in writing that I maintain operational control regardless of equity percentages. And I want quarterly transparency reports. Not because you don't trust me, but because I'm not running a company with secrets ever again. Morrison grinned. Already in the term sheet. I'll have my lawyer send it over. We shook hands and he left. My company was now valued at $150 million, the exact amount Cuban Technologies had been worth before Carl destroyed it. Except this time I actually owned it. No one could take it away from me. No board could push me out. No family members could steal credit or embezzle funds. Make sure to click on the screen to watch other stories.